I have Soli Mapaila, who is the second Deputy General Secretary of the SACP, and of course you, our most valued panelist at home, are most welcome to give us a call on 011-542-2186 or tweet at ANN7TV. Thanks, gentlemen, for joining us. Rema Paila, let me just start with you in terms of the expectation from SAP or the SACP in this alliance. What is your role in the tripartite alliance?
Well, firstly, the expectation is that we should be able to fulfill the mandate of our people to transform society until there's no poverty in this country, until there's no inequality, until there's no oppression of whatever sort from racial, gender, and class perspective. That's the overall mandate of our alliance.
Yes, but you do not have the autonomy entirely out of the alliance because you're reliant for your survival on the ANC. But let's bring in Tsepo here to explain in the sense that, I mean, can you mobilize? Can you go to the polls on your own without the ANC?
We don't rely on the ANC for our survival. We are a reinforcing partner of the African National Congress. We're an independent party, political formation in our own right. We are able to run campaigns, programs in our own right. But to the extent that the ANC participate in those campaigns and programs, it's important because those campaigns reinforces even the mission of the ANC itself.
Okay, so Tsepo, is it fair to say that this is a case of the saddle wanting to ride the horse in the case of the SACP?
I don't think so. One has to bear in mind that the alliance has actually spans many decades. And in those decades that the alliance has been in existence, there have been difficult times. There have been disagreements. One can think back when we look at the situation now, particularly in KZN, when SACP wanted Moses Mabhida as Secretary General, that the ANC then said, no, we will not release him from his tasks within the ANC. So certainly this is nothing new, and I do not believe that the disagreements will henceforth come to an end. But my own reading is that the differences that maybe we are seeing now are not on ideology, but largely, I think, on matters of style and approach to how they deal with things. But certainly, I think one can see that this is a dynamic alliance that particularly the SACP wants to continue to be that independent voice. But it is important to note that I think they themselves, the tripartite alliance members, particularly the African National Congress, SACP, and COSATU, they all have come to an agreement that the ANC will be the leader of the alliance and therefore the governing party. And hence I think there have been many discussions and questions say, well, why is SACP not fighting elections on its own? But one has to take it into that in terms of that historical context. Even when one looks at, even at the 60th anniversary of the SACP, this message by ANC as given by the then President Oliver Tambo was pretty much, I think, emphasizing the ANC being the leader, but also that even though they come from different ideological perspectives, yet they share a common experience of liberation of the oppressed people of South Africa.
All right, but for such a rich institution and the background that you've given as a preamble, there are processes and terms of conduct, if you will, Rema Paila, within the structures that you would be well aware and affair with. So why is it that we see this public spat, yourself making headlines in terms of saying you fear for your life, in talking about state capture, and saying that there's factionalism within the ANC, and there's money and power mongering, etc. Why not contain this within the processes that you yourself accuse the ANC of not having followed?
There's no accusation of the ANC having not followed whatever here. From
in terms of the candidates list and consultation?
That's an open thing. The flouting of procedures in ANC processes for nomination of councillor candidates. In fact, that's an alliance process. It's not just an ANC process. You must remember the ANC represent us on the ballot. So it's not that this wish that if the ANC were to go it alone, or if the Communist Party were to go it alone, the ANC will be stronger. Actually, the ANC will be weakened. So that's why the alliance is just bigger than any of these partners combined. And that's why they need each other. Also because of the ability to fulfill that mission of the ANC itself. On its own, the ANC will take many more decades to fulfill that mission.
But when you go public...
But let me
Yeah, but I just want to move on to the point.
No, let me complete, because you always interject when I speak. And
Guilty as charged.
Yeah. I think it's important that what we've raised, whether issues of factionalism, the issue is it real or not? If it's real, it must be dealt with. The impact of factionalism on the unity of the organization, on its ability to mobilize society when it's divided, cannot be helpful. But we must remember that in factionalism, a grouping of people will actually demote people or push people aside, unduly so. And that's undemocratic. That is why we want the proper functioning of the organization to be observed at all costs. And if there are problems in the ANC, they do affect the Communist Party, they do affect COSATU, they do affect SANCO. So that is why we will speak about this thing. But we have raised these matters first within the structures of the movement before we went public.
Okay,
so
I just want to get back
to... we just wake up and went out.
Correct. I just want to get back to the motive, though, because there's obviously an intention or a desired outcome that you'd like to see when you go public with these matters. Is it to impress your members, or is it really to mislead the public that there is irreconcilable or irreparable damage in the alliance, that, a divorce is imminent, as it were?
No, of course, it's not to impress our members. It's to speak the truth, and so that the problems are resolved. That's the bottom line. But also to compel the ANC to follow the correct process, its own process as well, which is also an alliance process.
By the way, that question was meant for Tsepo. You also interject.
That's all right. Look, I think when you look within the alliance, the two other tripartite alliance members, being COSATU as well as SACP, they are in a very unique position, whereby by and large, I think they are able to influence the ANC more than the ANC is able to influence them. And why am I saying that? Because when you look that SACP members, they also become ANC members, whereas there's no requirement for ANC members to, then there are ANC members who are not members of either COSATU or SACP. So they sit in that unique position. But one has to, I think, maybe ask a question that, well, being in that unique position, why are they finding it a lot more difficult to influence? More so, I think, if you look at the current national cabinet, in fact, SACP has got a greater deal of representation. I think my last reading was that there is at least 9 or so members of the SACP who are actually in cabinet, and in very influential, very important ministries. So I think this is certainly not helpful, that they have to be disagreeing publicly for them as a tripartite alliance. And we've seen, I think, late last year that, for example, KZN and under the Secretary of the Province of SACP, Tembo, that they were even mulling going it alone, say, well, maybe we should not really, we should be going it alone. And that, I think, it's certainly going into an election. I find that I think they are going to be dealing with these side shows instead of consolidating their position based on ideology that is shared.
Okay, let's take a caller. Victor, hello to you, calling from King Williamstown in Aubrey. We see you in PE or Nelson Mandela Bay. Hi, Victor.
Hello, madam.
Yes, sir.
You know, my question is, when the SACP was not a mass movement, the ANC was not competing with anyone. But today, now that the SACP is a mass movement, the SACP is competing with the ANC. Why the SACP not going alone to the polls, leaving the ANC alone, leaving the alliance alone, so that the ANC can go forward with its revolutionary agenda without the SACP? Because what is confusing now, in our structure, the SACP is now contesting elections or coming up with parallel structures because they want to be in cabinet, because they want to be councillors. But during the time when the SACP was not a mass movement, there were no young communist league. The ANC was working with alone. I don't know why this communist party now.
We get the gist of your comment or question. Thank you so much. Aubrey in Nelson Mandela Bay. Hello.
Hello, Cindy.
Yes, sir.
Yes. I'm also disappointed. I am a member of the SACP. You know, we on the ground, members of the SACP, we get sidelined by ANC when it comes to the election of councillors, and this is disappointing. I'm very, very disappointed. This thing of us being part of the ANC needs to come to an end. I'm so glad that at least the leadership starts to see this, because this is affecting us. The only people who are on the gravy train is our leadership. They need to come back to their senses. This alliance is not working for us. Or else we on the ground, we will contest the election on our own and leave the leadership as it is. Thanks.
Very ominous there, but let's give Rema Paila the opportunity to respond.
Yeah, firstly, the SACP is not about positions. And even the point that Comrade Tepo is raising. In the cabinet, essentially there are no communists, they are ANC representatives. If they were communists, there would be special dispensation for them to drive a specially designed communist program. But there's no such, because they go there under the mandate of the African National Congress. That's the essence of how we are represented as the alliance. In the election process, we are represented by the African National Congress, and we adopt a manifesto that we participate in its drafting. But it's not a communist manifesto. It's an ANC electoral manifesto.
All right, go it alone there. Victor was saying that, you know...
Yeah, that's the point. The point is, it's not whether we can go it alone or not. The issue is the decision of the alliance. The day the alliance is stopped, then we can go it alone. But for as long as we require each other, for the mandate that we still need to fulfill to transform our society, to make the people's life better, we will not go it alone. Because if we do that, in any case, if the ANC get rid of communists, for instance, it will not different with the DA. It will be a class party, like us. We are a class party, but of the workers, of the working class, not of the bourgeois, not of the rich. So if the ANC were to get rid of the SACP in particular, it will deviate towards that possibility of being like a bourgeois party and so forth. And that will not be good for the revolution.
Sure. We'll just get an impartial view from Rekhadima. In a bit, Alex, you're calling us from Johannesburg. Hello.
Hello, thank you very much. It's interesting that the view that will be coming from Padima will be impartial. The point is, you must understand the alliance because you misunderstand it. This is an alliance of independent organizations. ANC internal processes are not internal processes of the alliance or of other alliance partners. The SACP reserves all the right to express its views with or without consulting the African National Congress. You must not pass the impression that when the SACP exercises its independence, it is therefore violating some rules. Once you don't understand this point, you will continue to pass the impression that we are not following as the SACP internal processes if something is happening in the African National Congress. That is very important. And there is another point raised by Padima earlier on. In this alliance, we are bound to differ, just as the last point, we are bound to differ because we are not thinking from a same framework of thought. The SACP is a Marxist-Leninist organization. There are those who want to accumulate by exploiting workers. The ANC, the SACP is the chief representative of the workers and will differ with those who want to exploit workers and loot state resources. That is very important.
Alex.
And we don't need to, the SACP doesn't need to consult
Alex.
in order to express its views in that particular regard.
All right,
Thank
I
you.
get your point. One of your members, Aubrey, was saying that you are yes bus to the ANC. These are not aspersions that I'm making on my own. And if the conventional wisdom is anything to go by, the question is how much influence and power does the SACP have in influencing the ANC's decisions? But let's move right along. There's another caller. Hello, I didn't get your name. All right. Well, hi there.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, my name is Michael. Are you with me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. You're speaking to Michael, okay?
Go ahead.
All right. I'm a bit concerned here. I'm sorry to worry you guys. But when it comes to the SACP and the ANC issue, my main concern is here. I'm looking at this. I'm a born and bred guy who grew up in KZN. I'll be strictly or distinctly. I grew up in Nchanga, okay, where there's this big, massive, segregation or split between these two groups, ANC and SACP. Okay, where I'm staying, where I'm growing up, where I grew up, guys there, because they're SACP members, they are dying. This weekend, I'll have my friend or my guy who died on last week Monday. It's going to be buried on next coming weekend, just because he's an SACP member. Just because he's wearing a T-shirt, which is a red T-shirt, other ones are wearing yellow T-shirts. We just been concerned now. Why there's a split between our people? We lived together, we grew up together, but currently because of this split from the top management of the ANC, which makes people look bad. If you're an SACP member, you're no longer worth of living, worth of growing up at Inchanga. All
right, Michael, we get your point. If we'll allow our panelists and our condolences and sorry for your loss. But Tsepo, just to bring it back to the discussion here, in the sense that the doctrines, and I have been accused of not understanding what the different constitutions are of the two entities, but in just making it work for the intended purposes of forming the alliance, this doesn't help of having these spats and mudslinging from either side.
Look, I think maybe it signifies the problem at hand. One has to bear in mind that the ANC today as a governing party is a broader church than perhaps maybe it was 20 years ago when it came to power. And with it being the leader of the tripartite alliance, there is always this other ideological view which is not that obvious but yet very powerful. And that ideological view is the one that comes from business, which the SACP will call the bourgeoisie class. And very powerful and yet not very obvious. So one has to bear that in mind, that the ANC, with it being a broader church, there's going to be continually the stresses and this disagreements, purely because when you look at SACP together with COSATU, their colors are nailed to the mast, and so to speak. And as a result, I think the tripartite alliance, they've maybe come to that strategic inflection point where they need to be asking themselves a question that if they are to continue as a tripartite alliance led by the ANC, with the ANC being a broad church as it is, how do they then manage this conflicting positions sometimes and these conflicting views? And also their members, as SACP particularly, who are serving in government as members in good and regular standing of the African National Congress, how they then marry those sometimes maybe conflicting positions as leaders within the SACP and at the same time as leaders within the ANC.
It sounds very convoluted and schizophrenic for that matter, in that, how do you separate essentially from what is your home as the SACP, but yet you are accommodated elsewhere in a position of leadership within the government. Let's go through the conditions, by the way, why Themba Mthembu so far hasn't been sworn in as MEC of Agriculture in KwaZulu-Natal. Is he taking the position or not, or has he no choice in the matter?
He has a choice, of course. Firstly, I think we need a debate proper on the alliance, so that we don't confuse things in the process of discussions. And sometimes to come in maybe creates a long process and we don't have enough time.
Point taken.
I think what's happening is that he does have a choice. Safe to say, in this instance, because of the political environment in KZN, for which the Communist Party has been vocal about, which political environment has largely been a consequence of factionalism, gatekeeping, as well as flouting of organizational processes. So he almost became a spokesperson of the disgruntled, of the beyond the SACP. So that is why a consultation of this nature was very critical with an alliance partner that has been openly critical of the process constructively, not to destroy the movement, but to build it, to make sure that we are able to confidently go to communities and win elections. But we can't go to communities where, for instance, there's been disruptions, like in Janga, for instance, where a community meeting was attacked by thugs wearing ANC colors. They are in court now. They now killed a witness. So it's a serious problem. So when the SACP speaks about these things, it doesn't necessarily speak for itself, it speaks for the people who are affected by these wrong things. So his choice was whether to accept this question and betray the entire trust of the Communist Party. Or, actually, that's what he offered. He offered to actually leave the provincial legislature because he didn't want to accept this, and said, actually, it's better that he leaves so that he's not parcel of this particular process, provided the ANC leadership, jointly with the alliance, not beyond the party and the ANC, can address certain things. One of the issues was what we call conditionalities, which was a process for an inclusive engagement to build unity and consolidate unity of the movement across the board, including of those affected by factionalism in the province.
All right, we're out of time. So what are the time frames for Mr. Mthembu to make a decision?
There was a bilateral meeting this morning with the provincial leadership of the ANC and the party. I had an opportunity to join it in Durban this morning. We have agreed, we have issued a joint statement between the ANC and SACP, which joint statement outlines some of those conditions, which will also make sure that the entire leadership will go out to communities, to hotspots, and address the aggrieved communities, not for the sake of elections, but to address the problem that exists so that they are resolved. So that is finalized. It will now be up to the provincial government to arrange a swearing in.
Oh, all right. So it's a fait accompli, as it were, but just final words from you, Khadima.
Look, my view is that I think for the SACP to be expecting that factionalism and some of the killings that are suspected to be as a direct result of the differences, to expect that the ANC can resolve that, I think is expecting too much. The key question that needs to be asked is that anybody in this country who is engaged in any political activity should be safe. And I think the call should actually be more upon the law enforcement agencies as to how much are they actually aware of what is happening on the ground and ensure that this is stopped, whether it's within the tripartite alliance or any other party for that matter. And KwaZulu-Natal, I think that the law enforcement agencies need to be more assuring of the South African public that we will not see the return of the early 90s. And I think that is very important at this point in time.
We're going to have to leave it there. Khadima, thanks indeed. Tsepo Khadima is an independent political analyst, and we had the privilege of Solima Baila, who is the second Deputy General Secretary of the SACP. And you at home, thanks so much for taking the trouble to